Welcome. You are at the CCC.
Where there are no outside issues. Hi, my name is Bonnie Violet. I'm a trans, femme, genderqueer, spiritual drag artist, digital chaplain, person living with HIV, and I'm also in recovery.
My name is Anthony. I'm an addict and alcoholic, a 7th-year doctoral student in clinical psych. I'm eating this delicious thing that I've set on the table. That's all. I just want to tell you that. And I care about you.
Yes, and I'm Lulu, and my pronouns are he and him. I'm a former Miss Castro Country Club. I'm in sobriety. I'm in recovery for crystal meth and alcohol, and I am always in search of balance.
And each week we create and provide a brave space where we engage around topics of recovery.
And our intention is to hold and inspire better spaces for those people in recovery.
And,
by tackling topics sometimes used, to separate us.
See,
now it's your turn. I know.
Go. What were we going to say?
Oh, I said it already. It's time for Jaylon.
Jaylon, who are you?
I am in recovery. And I watch this show weekly, and I'm always commenting. And I thought I'd come show my face and comment live. So, yeah.
I love that you're here.
Wonderful. So, ding that.
Hey, did we get through all of that?
No, we didn't.
I'm sorry. I'm also doing...
Yeah, you didn't say ding that bell.
This wasn't one of our best.
That's okay. No, it's pretty good.
No.
But here. I'm literally eating peanut butter.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
I can hear it.
Like, subscribe, comment, and ding that bell.
Yes.
Ding, ding, ding,
in
ding.
case if you're wondering why we're so frustrated, we were getting ready. We're waiting to come on, and this lovely individual came into the room, and so we sprung into action to get
We had 1 minute.
Get the mic set up and everything, and so this is an extra treat. You'll get, instead of just the written words, you'll get the voice. Together.
Right. I was going to say Jaylon's always a part of the show. This time you're just in the room.
You're in the room, yeah. So, how is everyone doing?
Sorry, Bonnie.
I'm doing good. I'm in Idaho again until Thursday. Like last week, I just got out of my therapy session, so I feel like I got hit by a truck. But I will do my best to, I'm here. I'm glad to be here too. I look forward to our topic today. How are you all?
I'm good. I'm, it's like my apartment's clean after like 4 weeks of kind of not being able to invite people in. I had a moment where
No, why was it so messy?
It's okay. Let me just say, I think it's gay messy. It's fine. It works for me, but it's not, it wasn't like, if I'm going to invite you to my place, I want to know I've already swept behind the couch and under, so that like, when
your friends or your tricks,
whatever, when the place is
synonymous,
when you've done a deep clean and that every cranny of your place is clean. Well, I hadn't been able to do that. Just making up my bed, and my couch had a bunch of clothes on it, things like that. It wasn't presentable. Is that enough?
That's interesting, because when I think about your place, that's how I see it in my head.
Messy?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't.
I was just trolling. I wanted to see it.
No, it's fine.
And that's what we call gaslighting.
I know, exactly.
And to start the show, we will start with gaslighting.
Okay.
Just to get it out the way.
Yeah, let's get it out the way. Jaylon, how are you doing? How's your week?
It's going well.
Eat that mic.
Oh,
yeah, eat the mic.
Already doing it. Okay, I'm sorry. It's going well. It's only Tuesday, so the rest of the week.
You could get closer to your mic.
Oh, really close.
Yeah. There you go.
Like this, like I'm touching it.
Yeah, like
Got
that.
it. Okay.
ASMR.
Yes.
Yeah, you can
I have a good speaking voice as well.
Exactly.
But, my week's going good. I mean, it's only Tuesday. I haven't had the rest of the week to try me yet, so see what's in store. But I'm doing well. I can't complain.
I love it.
That's great. As usual, no one asked how I'm doing.
No,
so
how are you doing? I'm looking at
We're
you.
all just staring at you like,
I know. I'm just so hungry for attention.
Yeah.
My week has been great. I had my first ADHD coaching session. So I've talked about my ADHD before. My body doesn't respond to stimulants anymore, because when I used to do drugs, I used to take my my ADHD meds, and I used to cut them up with Coke, and I would put them together, and I would mix them up, and so now my body doesn't respond to them anymore.
Can I ask you,
Yeah.
how did you know to do that?
To cut them up?
Yeah, because I wouldn't have thought about that. I take my blood pressure medication to cut it up.
Well, because I used to have extended release, and so if you break an extended release capsule, you like intensify, right?
Oh,
So you shouldn't.
She
And
was
so
a scientist.
no, she was just a fucking addict. I just wanted to. Anyway, I think it all started because there was this one time I was with one of my fraternity brothers, and we didn't have very much Coke left, and I was like, "Oh, I have an idea. Let's break open my capsules, squish it together, and we'll they're the stimulant to me." Anyway, the point is that my body doesn't respond to stimulants anymore, so it's been difficult, and so I've been.
I was thinking about something else that my body doesn't respond
to stimulants.
No,
you're dumb. The takeaway is that I feel the takeaway is that my therapist is like, okay, Anthony, maybe it's time for you to start working with like an ADHD coach. And so I had my first official session this last Monday, and it was very, very helpful. I was really skeptical in the beginning, but I feel very encouraged and hopeful as a result.
Wonderful.
Yeah. So today's topic, shall we? I won't say it. So we'll talk. We're gonna start today. We're gonna be talking about phobias.
What's another way of saying transition?
So I can't.
I
What's
know, right?
synonym for transition? Should we go to the next section?
No.
I'm not doing the labor around that. You need to figure it out.
Let's Bonnie now.
We're gonna Bonnie now. Bonnie now. Bonnie
Violet now.
I know. I was just kind of okay, so we're going to talk about phobias. And, I don't know how we even came up with this topic.
I do.
Halloween.
Oh, right.
Yeah. We were like, we've already done one on fear. So part of it was kind of like, how can we talk about fear, but maybe a little differently? And in Halloween.
Excellent. Yeah. And I just burped, so I had to move my head away. What do I feel like? I'm very excited to talk about this because it's in my wheelhouse.
Mm-hmm.
So it makes me feel like I feel kind of like I have something to contribute.
Yeah. Well, and I think the thing about I think like for me, I plan to talk about, I have 3 phobias to share,
Wow.
but also I want to say too that I'm not diagnosed. So they're not like diagnosed phobias. They might be fears that for the sake of the topic, we'll talk about phobia, but I did look into like the phobias themselves and how they manifest. And it was really kind of quite interesting. And of course, WebMD told me that I had some phobias.
WebMD. That's now when you're talking about you don't do social media, that's the time when you shouldn't do social media. Before you talk to an actual doctor, because you can come down with everything before you show up to a doctor.
It's true.
It's not healthy.
Yeah. So maybe we can start off by defining what a phobia is. So there are a bunch of different ways of defining phobia. If we look at the word itself, phobia comes from the Greek word phobios, which means aversion. And so generally when we talk about a phobia, we'll put a prefix in front of it. So like the prefix is usually what tells us what the phobia is. So like homophobia is like fear of homosexuals, agoraphobia, fear of open spaces, right? Arachnophobia, fear of spiders, right? So that's generally that's kind of like the structure of the word. Now, phobias in themselves, when we're talking about like an actual diagnosis, we're talking about either a fear or an anxiety around a specific situation or like a specific object or thing, right? So you can have a fear of spiders, or you can have a fear of failure, right? That's kind of like more generalized. But the takeaway is it's generally a phobia is diagnosable when it impacts your life so much so where it starts to change things, right? So you don't leave your house, right? Because you have some type of fear, agoraphobia, yeah. And the other thing I just learned this recently is that agoraphobia, it's not necessarily like fear of open spaces all the time, but it's also a fear of leaving safety, right? Mm-hmm. So kind of like being at home.
Yeah, makes sense.
So I guess I introduce all of that to say is that there is a science and there's like a very organized way of talking about phobias, but that we don't exist in kind of like a medical Like that's not how we live our lives, right? So we could very well like have phobias that we've learned to deal with. We're kind of like white knuckling through it, and so maybe it's not hindering our lives, but it's hindering the quality of our life,
Yeah.
right? And I came across one phobia that I thought was interesting, which is the fear of failure. Is it called a tictophobia? I think I'm saying that right. A tictophobia, which I think is
Sounds good.
that sounds good. Yeah. So go ahead. What were you, I was
You
going to say
said of not being enough,
what? It's a
not being enough.
no. It's a fear of failure.
You know what?
Oh, failure.
Along with that fear of failure,
Mhm.
I think something that is quite common, like with all of us, like is also it almost for addicts, the two go together like a fear of success. Like because it's like you struggle with this idea of failing, and I've known more people who get past that or start doing really well and relapse or struggle. So
Yeah. So there's that's really interesting because that's actually what uh my dissertation chair. She's done all this work on guilt and survivor's guilt, and she would call that a form of survivor's guilt. That she would say that some people have a loyalty to someone in their family, and they have a fear of developing or advancing because they translate that as as disloyal to their family member, to whoever it is that they love, right? And so they play small.
yeah, no, that's
I swear you talk to my therapist every time.
Yeah,
Totally.
she told your therapist told you you're playing small.
yeah, like Marion
No,
was
but it was the act, just a very similar. They didn't put it in that way, but I like really related to it. But it's the idea like I'm needing to let go of like my family, and I'm really struggling with doing that. And when you said that, I'm like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. Like, why is it that I can't let go or whatever?
Yeah, I
That's
would.
a whole nother topic, but
Yeah. I would encourage like also. So the my dissertation chair, her name is Dr. Lynn O'Connor. She's done all this work on guilt, altruistic guilt.
Blood for Land.
Yeah, I love Lynn. We need to have her on. I think she's also in recovery. But she's done a lot of stuff on like survivor's guilt and altruistic guilt and motivation.
Spill her tea.
Spill her tea. No, I mean
right.
she said she would want to come on the show.
Oh
So
no, that's good.
okay. Yeah, so I don't want to take up like too much airtime talking about introducing the idea, but I think that maybe the last thing I'll say is that phobias are generally established really early in life. Normally, they're happening like before you're a teenager. They serve a protective function. There's one theory, like in psychoanalysis, for example, where like the thought is that we have unconscious kind of disruptive thoughts that we are afraid of dealing with head on. So what we do is we displace those thoughts and we put them into to objects. So like, I might have like, I'm trying to think of like a good example, but say I have a fear of ice cubes or no. It would be more like if I was thinking psychoanalysis, it would be like, I'm afraid of killing my mother. So I'll displace that and I'll have like a fear of, I don't know, dolls or some shit like that.
Yeah. You know what? So we keep like diving in. In Black and brown communities, especially like my age, psychotherapy, analysis, therapy wasn't something that was showing up. So it's understandable why, if I had any phobias, they would not be identified by a professional.
Right.
Like I would have had to figure out, like in my big green wedding, the only way I deal with my phobia is by spraying a little Windex on them.
Yeah. I think it's like really important. I hear that. And I think like one of the things that I think is really important is that even when like our communities may not have had like the medical language for it, we found ways of having conversations about those things, right? Like before we had psychologists, we had elders, in our communities, right? So we don't necessarily need like psychologists, sometimes we just need a really wise grandmother,
Yeah. Well, and I think some of it too is like, I know we were talking about like phobias. I think to go there, it is like a psych, it's like a psych term. But I think, fears and anxiety, you can still have fears and anxieties of the same things that haven't led to phobias. So I think even just being able to recognize that, oh, I don't have this phobia, but I do have this fear, And one of the things that I was noticing is like some of them, when you Google or whatever, they'll kind of tell you how to mitigate the symptoms or how to kind of address it, which I thought was really kind of interesting. And I found it helpful actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. So generally, like the cycle, a lot of the treatment modalities that I've seen have been around like cognitive behavioral therapy. For those who may not be familiar with that, that's just a way of saying that we can change the way we think by changing our behaviors, which is kind of like a lot like recovery, right?
Yeah,
Like when we take
absolutely.
contrary action. And so the cycle generally, like when we talk about anxiety, there's like a thought that's associated with a feeling that's associated with like an action, right? And
Mhm.
that's usually kind of the loop that we get stuck in. And what ends up happening is that we might have like an experience. So for example, our brains are wired to protect us. And so we're constantly adapting. And so when we were young, right, we may have learned to associate uh, men with some type of violence. So let's just say this is kind of like an easy example would be like there was a violent man, and so you grow up to fear men. But maybe we're not making that connection, right? But what happens is like now you're in the environment, you see a man. So when we talk about triggers, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about something in the world that kind of taps into maybe like into our lizard brain, right? So it taps into some thought, which then immediately like attacks some part of our central nervous system, and like now our body's like getting ahead of us, and we have no idea what the fuck just happened. You know, it's kind of like when you see people pop off in meetings, you know, or like whenever you like, that's normally what's happening is like so many of us have like all these traumas and fears that we never like had a conversation about or figured out how to address them. Bonneville, I'm curious about like some of the stuff you read about how to treat phobias or fears.
Well, it kind of like specifically there was like one that I looked at, which was I think similar to around the idea of like fail. I think you said fear of failure, or what was your
Fear of
feel, right? So I looked because I kind of thought like for me, I my one of my fears is kind of like fearing that like I'm gonna fail God or something, a God that I don't even like fucking believe or understand in or whatever, you know? Like, but I kind of landed on the not being enough. I think it's kind of in the same vein. And so that's called atelophobia.
Mm.
Um, and atelophobia is, again, it's like that fear of not being enough, but it talked about like there was like 6 things you could do. One was to stop comparing and competing with others. The phrase good enough implies a standard exists that you must meet. And I was listening to talking about the other phobia that I'll bring up later, but a doctor mentioned that judgment is the largest like projection. The largest is our biggest projection. So I think that kind of leads into that judgment aspect of things. It says 2, recall past achievements. 3, focus on the process rather than the results. 4, speak to a close friend. And 5, complete an act of kindness. And 6, go to therapy.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, so I want to take this moment to kind of to broaden the conversation. And so, for folks listening at home, we don't necessarily have to hold on to this idea of phobia. Maybe we can broaden this by talking a little bit more about fear, more broadly, and how like fear shows up. It doesn't have to be about a specific event. It could be about situations. It could be about thoughts. But just fear in general and anything that may like debilitate you. So for example, I know like this is a kind of a silly example, but when I am in the presence of someone I think is really attractive, like I will deliberately not talk to them. I won't make eye contact.
My voice gets lower.
Yeah, there's a reason for that.
Yeah.
There's yeah. So there are all these like different things, right? And that isn't necessarily like a phobia of like people that I find attractive, but there is definitely a fear that impacts my my mood and it impacts how I behave.
I think I was just trying to think of what naturally comes to my mind when I think of like fear. And for me, there was a really good just for today the other day. Responsibility. And that's like one of my huge fears is just taking on more responsibility because you know, for me now I'm working a program, I have a sponsor, I'm of service, I'm doing all these things. And because of that, opportunities are happening. And as these opportunities come my way, that provides more responsibility. And I think that you know, like you talked about, like that fear of failure. You
Yeah.
know, it's for me when I came into recovery, it was like, when is the other shoe going to drop?
Always, yeah.
You know, and so now that these opportunities are presenting themselves and I'm just kind of walking the path and walking through those doors,
Mhm.
there are 9 times out of 10, like throughout the day, like either if I'm at work or I'm at my internship, I'm just like, when are you gonna fuck up? Like this thought will
Yeah.
pop in and it's like,
Yeah.
when are you gonna fuck this up? Like
Yeah.
you're about, and I hate it, you know.
Mhm, mhm.
And yeah.
Yeah, I get that. I feel like that's certainly been my experience too. It's like I've gotten to a place now where it's like where I think to myself, what if I got the thing that I wanted? You know, like what if and what if all these like negative thoughts I had about myself weren't true? Like how would I behave then? And what I've noticed is that like historically, whenever I've neared the thing that I've wanted, I start to freak out and I hate to say self-sabotage, but I would essentially start doing things that would pull me away from like actually actualizing the thing that I want to do.
Absolutely.
Or achieve. And I think that's one of the things that recovery has given me is that I feel worthy. I feel like, oh no, I'm allowed to have these things.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
That's absolutely it's taken some time. Sorry, it's taken some time. I'm pulling an Anthony. It's like normally he's got the mic all in his lap. No, but it's taken some time and it's taken a little work to get to the place where I'm not afraid of like the extra responsibility or how it shows up. Because the truth of it is like, especially in the recovery rooms, if you start showing people that you show up, that you do the work, people are going to start asking you. The people will reach out and because they trust, you know, because I'm creating in myself this person that follows through. And that's a pain in itself because it's like then you move into that area where you need to learn how to say no.
Mhm.
Yes, definitely, because you start to become the person where, girl, can you share for me? Can you do this? Can you do that? And inadvertently, like this it feels like there's this obligation. And for me, I'm learning boundaries, like how to say no. Like that's something that's very important. But for me, kind of like with that fear of responsibility, I get so caught up sometimes because I'm like, what's happening? You know, these things are starting to happen. And, you know, I was having a conversation with a fellow earlier just about, you know, kind of like the point of recovery, the point of getting sober, you know, and I just kind of like in the beginning, I would hear all these stories about how the life got good and how the cash and prizes came and how it still at some point can just be thrown all away, how you can just burn it all up. And it's like somewhere it's like, and I don't know, I think I just like, I have this healthy curiosity for recovery so that like I'm always paying attention. And something I never forget, this fellow said at a meeting, like, you know, he was like, I relapsed back to back to back. And he would always go, when I come back, I have to realize that I have to stay sober anyway. And when he said that, something clicked in my mind and went, well, your recovery is not contingent upon the things. You know, we talk about this, it's an inside job, you know, and that's exactly what it is. So for me, what that looks like is working on that inner child stuff. It's important. I saw something this morning that was just like, you know, I need to take care of my inner child like it's my child. And
Absolutely, yeah.
Unless you're somebody. No. I was gonna tell you guys actually a really funny fear that I had when I was growing up. So I grew up in the 70s. So I remember it being in school, and I have this picture of me. Like at the time, I didn't think about it. I had this picture of me with this afro, these butterfly collars, and bell bottoms, and everything. And I had a fear during that time because I watched TV. I said I don't want to grow up with a big afro. But like,
God
I
said
didn't
you
want
got
to
it.
look like that. Like I was complaining, I don't want to look like that. I think it may have gone deeper. I was probably having issues with my blackness.
Oh, yeah. Oh, internalized racism.
Yes,
that's a whole other episode.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, because it's like I look at it, I'm thinking, I'm complaining about being what I already was.
Yeah. Oh, ooh, you just I can't even. Yeah. I certainly, and not to get us out. I had a lot of internalized racism, and it wasn't until I moved to California and I was given this assignment by one of the graduate student assistants instructors to research like the history of Puerto Rico and the United States. And I was like, oh shit, this whole time, like I've been hating myself. And it's like, anyway, whoo.
What- I think that leads nicely into one of my other phobias that I was thinking of bringing up was like transphobia and homophobia, which
Yeah.
I think is something we all can relate to. But and I think for me, I'm very interested in the internalized phobia. So can you talk to us? Is there a difference between transphobia and homophobia versus like a phobia of cockroaches?
You mean like within the community and outside of the community?
Or just kind of like, I mean, is it a diagnosis, so to speak? It seems like it's a different sort of category, if you
Yeah, that
will.
is. Yeah, doesn't seem like
Mhm.
it's different than arachnophobia or whatever.
Yeah, that's interesting. As far as I know, and the DSM was just recently revised. DSM-5 was recently revised. I don't know that homophobia or transphobia are in there. You can have phobia because a phobia is an anxiety disorder, right? So we can tack on any prefix and call it a phobia. So that's it. I would just say that there isn't any kind of specific one in the DSM. I'll have to double check. But ultimately, all phobias are anxieties. They're anxiety disorders.
There's dragophobia. I have a friend who was who had
fear of clowns.
Fear of drag queens because when he was young he lived in Chicago and he was walking home past Marshall Field to the department store and all these really aggressive drag queens, apparently they had cut a hole in the center of the roof and they were in there stealing stuff, all like mannequins, everything. I think they showed it like that in Pose.
I live that.
And they had a flatbed truck and they were loading it up. And I think the one drag king came up to him and said, if you say something, we're going to kill you.
Yeah.
And
and
when he first told that story, I was laughing, of course, like everybody else, but I didn't realize that it was real. I mean, that his fear of drag queens was real.
Yeah, when you first said it, it made me think of like homophobia or transphobia that would play out in drag. You know what I mean? I know that I had a fear of drag and a fear of doing drag when I was younger, or I was unable to do it because I think of transphobia. Like it was tied to that. It wasn't, obviously this person had a experience with like actual drag, queen versus me. I think it was, something else was going on.
Yeah, I've heard some really interesting ideas about homophobia and transphobia. And one of the ideas that I've heard is that it's really an issue of sexism. That for example, it's been kind of more acceptable for like lesbians are relatively seen as more acceptable. I'm just kind of speaking of but like lesbians are considered much more acceptable, especially a butch lesbian is considered much more acceptable because she's buying, these are not my words, but she's buying into masculinity, and masculinity is preferable. But when a man gives up his privilege of masculinity, there's something about that is really jarring for other men. And I think that in that is sexism. I think rooted in that is this idea that to be a woman is undesirable. Madonna had that line in one of her songs many years ago. But I think maybe kind of like the takeaway is that one, as usual, these things are really complex. And that they can be really granular, and sometimes it's like hard to tack on, right? Because when I'm out in the world, like I have certainly had issues with like growing up, like I would get beat up if I said or did anything that was effeminate, right? And so I had to learn what it meant to have like certain masculine characteristics when I was in the hood, right? And even sometimes I couldn't even do that well enough.
Code switch.
Yeah, you kind of learn to code switch, and then
What's that?
Code switching.
You know what it is.
That's a topic we need to have.
Code switching. Man, there's so many interesting
I need
things.
to come back for that.
Yeah,
Yes, exactly.
Code switching, but briefly, code switching is when, if we wanted to talk about language, it's when you switch from one language to another. But in this case, we're talking about cultural languages. So, for example, I was born and raised in the project. So there is probably a way of showing up and speaking in the projects than, say, if I'm in an academic setting, I might show up differently. Although some people would argue now that that's a form of linguistic terrorism and that we should be able to kind of speak however we want to speak in whatever situation that we're in.
Terrorism.
Yeah.
I'm going to use that.
Yeah, linguistic terrorism.
Exactly. Is that like Nina Simone defecating on a microphone?
I feel like I personally feel like it's redundant, but there's the conversation feels like it's all over the place, and I feel like the reason why is because yet again we're talking about something that's
large. That is
multifaceted and has many different.
I think it's good that we're just having the conversation.
Yeah.
Like I've always thought, like what makes this work for me is that we are having conversations that sometimes people don't feel comfortable having, or you can't find. Like I was telling Anthony before the podcast, and I think the reason I feel like I'm being affected deeply by continuing to have conversations, because before I wasn't able to find people to have these conversations. Like I would have a conversation every now and then, but it wasn't the norm.
Right.
And this needs to be the norm. I want it to be, like when you're in college,
Yeah.
when you're around other people who are, you're constantly having conversations that are kind of stimulating, that are, getting.
And even something like, like you mentioned earlier, just culturally, me as a person of color, we don't do this in my house.
Or we do it differently, right? Because we have different, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Go on.
No, I was just, we don't do this. Like, it's only until now, well, I can honestly thank recovery that I'm able to have these conversations with my mother, because she is curious and she wants to know, like the ins and outs of like what my addiction looked like. And,
You sound, that voice is deep.
Oh,
yeah, right on. Let's keep on talking.
She's curious now, and I can have these conversations candidly.
Right.
Just being able to answer questions because I'm working my steps and I have language now, and to be able to converse with her. It's amazing what recovery is doing. Sometimes I don't even realize, she wants to know. And like she even sat in on meetings once.
Then you don't have, the other thing is you don't have the same kind of fears about striking up those conversations, because kind of what you were saying before, I think sometimes we are worried that folks are going to think that we're being uppity, or coming off a certain way or whatever. And like the goal for me here in this process is to try to be authentic, as I am, unapologetically me. But if I've got people that I love, who the ones who installed the buttons that get me, if I'm that's the last kind of standout. Like I can change and show up a certain way for other people, but the people that I love, even if they damaged me, I'm still tiptoeing, walking on eggshells. So no, I think that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, like, even with setting boundaries, that's something that's possible now because of these conversations, especially because in my households, setting boundaries or essentially telling somebody what they can and can't do, you just didn't do that. And I'm able to say certain things because I have that language now to be able to do that.
Yeah. There's so much here. Oh my gosh. I wanted to go back to what you were saying about our families. I know one of the best conversations I had a professor, an undergrad, her name was Lydia Perda, and we were sitting there and I was just so angry because we were talking about homophobia and internalized homophobia. And I was like, well, this shit is real cute to talk about in this setting where we have like the shared context and we've all read these books and and I'm like, how do I go home and talk to my grandmother, my immigrant grandmother, who's in her 70s, about internalized homophobia? And then she said, that's when we become translators. And so up until that moment, I thought, oh, there's all this stuff that's inaccessible to this whole community. And it's like, no, that was my own limitation, And I think the other thing I wanted to say about that is, at least speaking from like the way I was raised, is that, we may not have had the language, but we certainly had the experiences, like maybe we didn't know to call it depression, but there was certainly depression. And then I also think and who the hell had time to go to a therapist when your parents are like working 3 fucking jobs, or, you know what I mean? So, again, like it's one of those things that is really fraught, because really what we're talking about is like mental health,
I'm reading this right now.
Yeah. What's it called?
The Unapologetic Guide to Being Black. And,
who's it by?
I forget the author. You put me on the spot.
That's all right.
You can send it to us.
Yeah.
But it's unapologetic guide to Black mental health.
I love that.
Nice.
Yeah, I love that.
It's talking about literally everything that you're saying right now.
Yeah. You're reminding me, there's this great book. It's called Black Gay Man by Robert Reed Farr. And it was written, I think, in the 70s or 80s. And it's about the gay experience, like the gay Black experience.
I just wanted to add my 2 cents, since you guys are really.
What?
I read this amazing book called "Why Black People Yell."
Is it really called that?
Is it accurate?
Yeah, well, no, it's pretty intense. I mean, I think it comes down to none of us want to be forgotten. It's about legacy. It's like, because when you feel like you're invisible, when you feel like you're not seen, so it's like,
You get loud.
people dismiss us as being boisterous, but really what I'm trying to do is be seen. I'm all, hey, look, I'm here. And go ahead.
I'm just so overwhelmed right now. There's so much to talk about. So there's this great paper by I think his last name is Baumeister. It's called On Belonging, or Belonging, the need to belong. And basically it's the argument that like humans have this inherent need to belong and to be in community. And so, for example, a breakup, he didn't say this, but a breakup, for example, can be devastating because on an evolutionary kind of like foundation, our bodies translate that as a rejection from the community, which if you depend on your community to survive and your body, that means you're going to die. Like your body's going to feel like it's going to die. Okay, we'll stop there.
Yeah.
We have 5 minutes, 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Yep. So 10 minutes. If anyone that is at home listening, anything resonates with you, you want to, if there's anything, just chime in. And then I'll turn back over to you two.
Well, Bonnie, did you have anything else to talk about fear?
Yes,
We went into another.
I was so excited.
Yeah, exactly.
No, I mean, it was great. I was enjoying listening to you all, and I just I like where it went. I mean, like you said, we're covering a lot, and one of the things that I mean, I too didn't grow up in a family that had some of these experiences, and I think one of the things that I was thinking of was like one of the gifts of the programs, and one of the things that's so foreign about us even being in a program and like getting well is that like we come from families and who don't speak the same language, and they don't, what I mean, like, but that's kind of what our gift is to be able to hopefully have some sort of impact on our family, right? I mean, I think for me that's some sort of higher goal, right? Like hopefully with each generation we get a little bit better with the other, right? And so I think that's part of our process. I think if we get to like take what we learn here home and help out, that's great, but there's probably a good chance that we might not be able to either,
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah.
I just wanted to go back to Baumeister. It was Roy Baumeister and Mark Leary. It's a seminal work. It's been cited over 35,000 times. And the paper is called The Need to Belong, Desire for Interpersonal Attachments as a Fundamental Human Motivation. That's all. I just wanted to make sure I added that for folks at home who want to go read papers. So with the 5 minutes that we have left, what shall we talk about?
If we have,
you're saying 7. I see 5, Brandon. He's shaking his head.
We have a couple minutes. Like,
Okay.
I feel like I love that you take the notes, because in just this conversation, I've seen a bunch of shows that we can do specific around.
Yeah, we need to remember them.
Yeah, I know.
Once we're off air.
No, exactly. Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Anyway, there's so many things to talk about. Folks at home, as usual, speak pipe. Are we going to do that right now?
Yeah. If you are wondering how you can get in touch with Lulu, you can always catch me on the gram at Lulu86. I've been expanding kind of my content on. I've gone to some adult content. No, I'm teasing.
You can't do that on Instagram.
No, I'm kidding.
No.
I'm kidding. No,
promote it.
I found the reels. It's like I got a couple reels where I'm walking around talking, so so that's kind of cool. So that's me.
Cool.
Awesome. And you can reach me, Bonnie Violet, at A Queer Chaplain on all of the things.
And as usual, you can kind of reach me at @LucasCCC on Instagram. Or if you want to email us, you can email us at podcast@castrocountryclub.org. And if you're feeling chatty, you can leave us a message on www.speakpipe.com/@the CCC.
Absolutely. The Castro Country Club is a safe and sober community center for all people and a refuge for the LGBTQ plus recovery community.
They provide programs and services that help people change their lives by supporting personal growth.
Their vision, or our vision, is to reduce the suffering of addiction by connecting people to community, opportunity, and support. You can find more information at castrocountryclub.org.
And tune in every Tuesday at 4 p.m.-ish when we go live on our Castro Country Club Facebook and YouTube channels.
What? Find us on all of your favorite podcast sources. Hey, what was that time? What time is it, Bunny Bunny?
No, it's what day of the week is it? Or
Oh,
what Tuesday? What Tuesday is it?
that's what I get for trying to troll you.
Yeah.
You
What
should
Tuesday is it?
do that.
Yeah. What Tuesday? It's every Tuesday.
Every Tuesday, right?
Yeah. And
And
don't we have
what?
that one where catch us where you find all podcasts?
Catch us outside.
Find us in all your favorite podcast sources.
Oh, girl.
I think that Brandon is trolling us now.
Brandon, I think Brandon's just putting random shit on the screen right now.
Yeah, so it's like, hey, so we want to wish a happy anniversary I know they want to wish happy anniversary
Who?
if they're watching Dominic.
Yeah, Dominic.
One of our
Oh,
first-
Dominic. 6 years, yeah.
6 years
Mhm.
sobriety.
Congratulations, Dominic.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Congratulations.
You'll know what that is.
Yeah. Maybe we should start doing that. Like if folks are celebrating a milestone, show up that day and we'll give you a shout out on here.
Okay.
No?
Yeah. No.
I probably should talk that with the
No. It's always nice to do it. It's like, because you can go back and play it and say, oh, they said my name. I'm super excited that we had a surprise special guest.
Jaylon, so great of you to join us today.
I
Thank
know.
you for having me.
Thank you for all your contributions too, because I think that every time your name, goes up, I get all proud. I mean, I'm not your sponsor, but I'm your sponsor. So it's like it's a beautiful
Sponsor. Oh, well, humble brag, light flex.
humble brag,
Yeah.
exactly. Well, because he, after a while, he's working with him a little while. All of a sudden, he'll start saying some of the things that I say. Yeah.
Mhm.
So I know who to punch.
I
mhm.
know who to punch, exactly.
Hello. Hey, Brandon. I don't know what I was going to say.
Yeah, I think that's what they call dead air.
Yeah, I think this is like, when you're in a conversation with, this happened to me recently. When you're in a you're in a
Exactly.
conversation with someone and you're like, we've run out of things to say.
Oh God, I gotta go.
Yeah.
Oh, well, that's when the shenanigans happen.
This shouldn't.
Oh, sorry.
Normally what I say is like, okay, I'm going to go now. Because I don't like, what else am I going to do?
Or
Ouch.
actually what I say is good talk.
Yeah, good talk. It was a good talk. Emmanuel today. That was
Yeah.
okay.
Oh, good.
Well, 1 minute left. So I think this is where we say bye. Bye. We love you.